social media has helped grow the business. People buy for people, James. It's as simple as that. I was really unwell. I got pneumonia, and I almost died with pneumonia. Work ethic and positive attitude. That's the two things. Everything else you can teach. If you live regretting the decisions you've made, you're spending too much time in the wrong things.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Founders Unscripted. Today I'm joined by a guest, Jim Reid, who has started off at Harper Motor Company before a 13-year spell in various roles at Lawrence O'Kemney, and then eventually founding Jim Reid Vehicle Sales in 2003, and still involved to this day along the way, which is absolutely brilliant. From selling your first car, I noticed, it was a silver Vauxhall Corsa, to now obviously leading a very robust business, and I'm sure there's been many lessons along the way that we can share, good and bad.
There certainly has.
But Jim, I think it's fair to say that many people will be aware, as am I, of your kind of LinkedIn presence, and have almost 11,000 followers there, which is absolutely class. But how influential has social media been for your business growth in general?
Very is really the word to use, James. Various different aspects of social media has helped grow the business. I think Facebook was like the first part of the social media, and Twitter when it was Twitter, when you could actually do 140 characters or whatever it was back in the day, and that's how I made a lot of industry friends, which are still today. We've built associations off the back of it, which is amazing. But it's been very influential with the growth of the business. Facebook, especially, as I say, going back to Facebook, we couldn't nail Facebook. Right. We couldn't get the followers that we needed. Couldn't get the likes, but it was all about likes. And we got Neil Waitman, who was actually a DJ with Northsound back in the day, and he was wanting to start up his own business in social media. We got him involved with it for a start, and he showed us some background tips. I'm sure I'm still due him some money for it. Okay. And we just grew from there. Yeah. So Phil, my son-in-law Phil Buchan, very much into social media, and just with that we managed to grow it organically. So I think we've got about 15 or 16,000 followers on Facebook. We definitely post once a day at least, if not 2 or 3 times a day, and we still to this day sell cars off of social media, which is immense, really. Especially, if you look back, our industry to be successful, it's always we've been fed with the auto trader side of things. You've got to advertise your cars on Auto Trader to sell cars to the public, to be in with it's like a classified site. And through a lot of bit of fallout with Auto Trader a good few years ago, it must be 12 years ago, we decided not to go with them anymore and advertise with them because of the cost aspect. And we started advertising on Facebook, and we still advertise on Facebook to this day, and it's working still. So, and I mean, I can guarantee you some of the cars that will actually be on social media today will sell through a link, through a Facebook contact. Really? Without an absolute doubt.
Yeah, so that's a huge part of your business.
Definitely.
Yeah,
100%.
Sticking on social media wasn't my next question, but we'll go into it. So obviously you've also got the LinkedIn profile, which is more kind of Jim Reid, personal rather than the business, but obviously kind of floats between the two. Has that been a massive thing as well in terms of a lot of people go on about personal brand, right? But has that been as impactful and fruitful as the maybe Jim Reid Vehicle Sales on Facebook?
Yeah, so I think businesses, regardless of size of business, if I go a step back a bit, James, when I started up a business for a start, it was like, what do you pick your name for? What name do you pick for your business? And a wise soul said, you just use your name, Jim. If you anything to be scared of, if you use your own name. And I went, no, as well. Just use your own name, and if you can call it vehicle sales as well, it means obviously it's describing what it is. So that's always kind of stuck with me. So but even with that kind of personal name attached to it, it's very easy for a business to hide behind a business. So you just see the people So by using LinkedIn, I think it's built the personal part of it. So I can gonna give personal views, which are honest, values and views that I've actually got, family views that I've actually got, to the general public, who then go, well, listen, I like that sound of things. I will actually deal with him in business. And that's how it works. That's how it works. If you know the person behind the business and you like what he or she stands for, you'll actually deal with them. People buy for people, James. It's as simple as that. And if you do like the person or like what they stand for and their values, I think that's important. So personal brand, yes, because now we've got a name, personal brand, but it's very, very important to put your views across. But what you've also got to be mindful of, or what I've got to be mindful of as well, is Jim Reid Vehicle Sales as a business is made up of 22 people. Right. So if I just stand there as Jim Reid Vehicle Sales, it's not maybe exactly the same view as one of the mechanics or one of the valeters. They maybe hold different views. So again, likewise, you've got to be, hence why obviously I go to the personal brand for LinkedIn sort of thing, to say some of the stuff.
Aye, no, brilliant. I love that. We'll touch on the stuff in a minute, but before you mentioned there when you started the business and coming up with the business name, etc., and putting the Jim Reid at the front and centre, but obviously employed before that within the industry. Looks like you built up different career progressions there. Was there a kind of key moment or certain thing that you've seen in the industry when you were employed that you thought, I could do better, or seen a gap in the market that made you go and obviously establish a business?
I think the two businesses that I actually worked for previous to starting up my own, I was lucky. Right. I've been very, very lucky with who I've employed by, and I'll give a background of that. Harper Motor Company, family-owned company, very big company at the time. I left when it was taken over by Arnold Clark. Right. Okay. Now there was no only reason for that apart from the fact that, although you think, well, Kintore and Aberdeen's not that far away, it is when you're a 50cc motorbike. You know what I mean? Yeah. A really dangerous road as well. So I wanted to get somewhere closer to home, and I was staying in Kintore with my mum and dad at the time, and I got opportunity because I saw getting advertised a job at Lawrence Academy, and it was actually in the parts side of things at the time. So I finished my apprenticeship there, and it was a great place, fantastic place. Honestly, one of the best places to work. Family owned and driven. Lawrence's were very much involved. Helen Crichton, it was actually Norman's daughter. So, the history of the place made it up. In fact, my dad used to buy cars from them as well in the past. So we knew about them. They're a brilliant way of working with staff. Absolutely fantastic. They looked after you so well. And I made my way up with that and got to the parts side of things. And there was two young guys in front of me, and I couldn't see me get any further, so I applied for a couple of jobs. But I got an opportunity to sell because there was a couple of guys retiring through in the sales side of things. And they asked me to come through, you want a wee shot at this? And I said, well, how we shot at it. And the first weekend sold 3 cars. And I was working at the weekends. I was working during the week in the parts department, doing my job. And then at weekends, Saturday and Sunday, I was kind of topping up my wage by selling cars through the front. And Tommy Higgins, who was the boss at the time, he says, no, I want you through here all the time. And that's where it progressed to. Started selling cars, then progressed to team leader. And when there was a split with the company, through whatever politics it was, or difficulties there was, financial difficulties there was at the time, I stayed with Lawrence Academy and the Academy branch, which was quite a difficult period because we lost the Vauxhall franchise, and all we knew was Vauxhall, and that was really difficult. So I was then sent out to buy cars for a marketplace I didn't really know. It was a used car marketplace. You could only sell used cars, and that was really difficult. We then got a Ford franchise, which then helped. But I became very, very unwell. I've never really been unwell during my lifetime, but I was really unwell. I got pneumonia, and I almost died with pneumonia. Believe it or not, 30-odd year old, 2 kids at home, and just the stress of the job, because there was so much things going on at the time, and I got really unwell because I'd gotten soaking wet at a couple of events, cold at a couple of events, and I didn't realise I'd actually caught it. And you battle on as you're in your 30s, you think you're completely infallible, and actually had pneumonia, and I was off my work for 6 or 8 weeks, and that changed my perspective completely. So if it was a life-changing moment, that was a moment. When you're laying up unwell and you kind of whack and you've only got your own thoughts to think about, that is when you start thinking the world a bit differently. And I thought to myself, why am I working 80 hours a week? Why am I working 80 hours a week and not for myself? And that's when I started obviously investigating for there. And you know, things moved on. I got interviewed by a chap in Aberdeen. I got offered a fantastic job with this guy in Aberdeen, and I turned it down. I turned it down, and he said, "Why you turned it down?" I said, "Well, it's not really what I want to do." And he said, "Well, what is it you want to do?" I said, "Well, I want to start my own business." And he said, "Well, once you're ready, come back and speak to me."
Okay.
And I didn't really even know this chap that well. And so I thought, let's get to work. I'll start working out things, do a business plan as you do. Got this business plan, and one day I picked up the phone and says, "Do you remember me?" And he says, "Yep, are you ready?" And I says, "Yep." So I went in, popped in the business plan, he flicked through it, and he goes, "Okay." And he turned it around, popped it back in, and he says, "This is what we're going to do." And that was it. Right. That was basically the first start of Jim Reid Vehicle Sales. So we had a silent, he was a silent partner, he was involved, he put in money for a start, we bought him out after 6 years. So Gail and I are the only business, well, we were the only shareholders up until just recently, because we actually gave away some of the shares to some of the family. But up until that point, we were the only shareholders. So I think you need a bit of help. Yes. You know, when you're starting up in business for a start, it's difficult because in the automotive business, you need money. You know, you need assets to go and sell. Gail and I, you know, when you look back, it's crazy. You know, I mean, when you look back, would I make the same decision now? I don't know if I would, but remortgage the house to get 20 grand out of the house to put in the business. You know, with 30 grand as a business, we've all put in £10,000 each, and 30 grand business. And I managed with that, with management accounts, I managed to borrow £100,000 for this guy as well. And I paid that back within the year. So we managed to get an overdraft for the bank and things like that to start off with. And that's where we grew from. But it was, I'm not going to say it was easy, because it wasn't easy, but it was so rewarding. I remember one of my customers coming in who dealt with for Lawrence's for years. And he says, "Wow," he says, "what a change in you." I says, "Really?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "You look healthier and younger and less stressed." And I'm working my own business. And you think, really? Was that? I didn't realise I was at that state, if you know what I mean. So it just shows you that you've got to step back to go forward. And that's exactly what I did. And push. You know, I was working 7 days a week for the first year at the business. It's so rewarding when you're working for yourself. You know, when you're putting every penny back in and you're making money for yourself, it's brilliant. That's a motivator. It's a family side that motivates you. 2 young kids. Liam was 7, and Laura must have been about 11 when we started, or 6 and 10 or whatever it was. And so we've now got to the point where we started with 2 of us, and Gail was. You know, we did everything. I mean, Gail and I were just saying the other day. She says, "Remember that day we went up to like Huntley or Keith or something like that to buy an old post office van because there was a guy looking for a van?" I says, "I know. I remember that. I remember that day really, really well." But the great thing about it was we were spending time together. You know, in the business as well, which was brilliant.
Tick both boxes.
Absolutely. But you know, if you look back as well, James, there was tough times. You know, even that first year, it was 2003. It was we started in February, got off to a really decent start, and got to the August, and it was like one of the hottest July and August time. We'd hate to look back at history books, but it was really, really hot. I remember it being blistering hot. And sometimes the weather does affect everything, buying habits, but it certainly affects car sales, because I remember people coming up and was opening the doors of the cars and the heat inside the car. I want to test drive that today. And sales were actually drying up. So I remember actually going out with the kids and with little postcards made up, just saying, reminding them obviously where we were in the mill, and popping them through the letter boxes just locally, just to try and get some business, because no one was coming in, so, and that was really before the whole social media thing took off. When you're just, advertising in the newspaper and putting things through letter boxes, that's what you're relying on to get people in, so. But yeah, you look back with, I think, rose-tinted glasses a little bit. It was good. It was certainly good fun
I can
at the
imagine.
time, and you look at yourselves too to worry about. And if there's a mistake made, well, you pick it. I'm a great believer in picking up your hand if you make a mistake. And any mistakes in the business lay with me anyway. Because there's only me and Gail. So that was it. So.
A lot to take away from there. Do you mind me starting on, you mentioned going for the job interview post-illness, and then, right, well, you come to me when you're ready. So I'm assuming they came in as a shareholder. Almost a mentor type role, would that be fair to say as well? Was there a previous relationship you'd built up with this guy, or was it more just a case of...
Not at all, didn't know the guy at all. I was asked to go to an interview by someone who worked alongside him, and I worked alongside him previously, and that was the only thing I knew. But it just so happens that once I get to know the chap, it just so happens we had so much in common. Families came from the same area, and there was just so much in common. And he's very much a businessman, and he was looking for an out for himself. He was wanting to almost semi-retire for himself, and he saw something obviously in me that he could obviously. That's why he offered me the job. He thought, listen, I could obviously see something to get out, or set aside some more time for himself. And he offered me that job there and then. And it was with vans. And the irony was, I remember going home to Gail and saying, I've been offered this job. Vans, I don't know about vans. And the irony is, I've a hire fleet. I sell vans now. They're actually some of the most profitable deals that we've actually got. And I hated vans at the time, but I think it's been the right decisions, obviously, going forward. But yeah, so he was in as a shareholder, and we managed to borrow off some money to get a start-up, because the bank doesn't want to know you at the time. Too much a high risk in the automotive business. But once we managed to show a year's worth of management accounts, we managed to borrow for the bank and pay off, obviously, the borrowings. And as I say, once there was an opportunity to buy back, obviously, those shares, which is what we did, and we just went out on our own from there. So, yep.
Good. How do you think things would have went if you hadn't crossed paths with that guy? Would the business started out a lot differently?
I think it would have. I would have likely started up doing something. It would likely be a lot smaller scale. Right. I think. It's difficult to know, isn't it? That is. It's very, very difficult to know. You do wonder, but you don't know the opportunities that you've missed, do you? So you kind of look back and regret, obviously, meeting somebody you reckon about the opportunities you actually do miss. So, but no, it was a great opportunity. We grasped it with both hands. And I remember after that meeting, going home with Gail and we went to a walk. And I remember exactly who we were walking at the time. And I said to Gail, I says, what if I said we were going to start up a business, Gail? And she turned around, and this is her words. She says, which took you so long, Jim? And I thought, wow, it wasn't like the response I was expecting, but she backed me 100%, and she still backs me 100%. She trusts me with every decision I make. I think the worst decision you can make in business is the decision you don't make. That's what I always say to guys. Look, there's no right or wrong decision. Just make one. If you dither about and didn't make a decision, it's worse. It's the worst thing. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your customers' time and whatever as well. But no, I was the way forward, and Gail just backed me 100%. And we sat down and worked out what it was with solicitors and whatever, and then it was like go out and find a premises, which we found an old premises at Spence's Yard, which is now where Sainsbury's actually is. Actually, our office was, when we moved in for a start, there was like a double glazing firm or something like that, had went out of business because of loads of bills and things like that. And when we opened the door, there was loads of bills, and we just basically tarted it up and cleaned it up and got into place, and with a yard out front, and we laid new chuckies and put up a fence. My dad helped me put up a fence and things like that. But yeah, you look back, you think what a risk it was, because I mean, decent sized mortgage, 2 kids, and I always promised, and I'm not a traditionalist like this, but or sexist like this at all, but we always agreed, Gail and I, that as long as we could afford to, Gail would bring up our kids, and I would be the breadwinner, and we managed to do that. And obviously Gail came in and helped us for a lot of years with invoicing and things like that as well, as an extra pair of hands. But once you got the opportunity, she's kind of backed off as well. She doesn't like the business side of things. She enjoys the family side of things. And we've now got that opportunity with the grandkids as well.
So, I think you're bang on the money. It's something me and my missus did actually for a couple of years. She took a career break in between having our second girl, and we were just like, you can't get that time back when they're that young.
It is. I mean, my daughter. So my daughter Laura, who's she's one of the directors, and she's married to Phil. And they've got 3 kids. Aria, Murray, and Ada. Fantastic. Wild, but fantastic. They're fantastic fun. Great fun to have. And Laura has basically done that as well. She's a midwife. She's a fully trained midwife, and she did midwifery for a while, but she hasn't gone back after having the kids. She will come back into the business, obviously. She does 1 day a week, and she will come back into the business at some stage with ourselves, once Ada's actually off to school. But, that is how she saw it as well. You only get one opportunity to bring up your kids. Liam and Shannon, listen, they've taken a slightly different tack, but, she's a biochemist, bioscientist, in ARI, tested blood, and because it was a career choice, she's doing 2 or 3 days a week. So it's not part-time, but it's so she does obviously look after Faye as well, and Faye's just absolutely brilliant. So it's great having the kids about it, and they're also local as well. They are staying in Hatton.
Brilliant. Good. So starting out in the business yourself, and kind of Gail getting things going 7 days a week, obviously 2 young kids, to now having 22 of a team. How was that? Do you remember that first kind of external person you hired, staff member you took in? How was that process?
I do. There's a bit of laugh behind that, a wee bit of story behind that. So one of it wasn't the very first cars that we were cleaning, but I remember cleaning the cars for a start. That little silver Corsa, I remember cleaning it. It was an Enterprise car, little Corsa SXIs, and you could sell them. Honestly, you could, as long as they're priced right, you could sell these all day long, every day. And we sold hundreds of them. Brilliant cars. But it was this Ford Mondeo. I remember buying this Ford Mondeo and I was cleaning it, and it was reversed down towards obviously the garage, because it was right outside the pitch that we were actually hoovering. The hoover come out the window type of thing. And I remember I had to climb it inside this, and the tailgate kept coming down, and I bumped my head. Right? I bumped my head. And I get such a crack that I just took the tailgate and I went, it was just like expletives galore. And I said to Gail, I'm fucking cleaning the name of our cars. That's it. First employees get to be somebody to clean cars, and that's exactly what happened. It was just on a year. We just turned a year old. I wasn't going to deal with him the first year. We went a whole year without it, and we got somebody to clean the cars after that. And that was our first employee, and it was like, honestly, it was like bliss. Sitting in my office, looking out, and seeing the work getting done. It was absolutely bliss. So I could concentrate on the bit I wanted to do, which was obviously the contact with the customer and selling the cars. So Yeah, so that was a game changer. That was an absolute game changer. And then we went to the next stage, was obviously we taking somebody on for sales. Somebody was actually selling to me. I said, I think I could offer you a job. I think you'd be good at selling cars. And we took on one person. And again, likewise, when it's a small team, when it's just you know, and Gail and a cleaner, and it's very difficult. It's a very difficult small team, isn't it? You know, and where do they integrate and also who do they complain to? Can they go home and just because everybody moans about their work, didn't they? And who did they moan to? So it made it was quite difficult, I think, likely for the two first guys that come in, but it was one, and it was just about the time the property thing went out of the pot, the financial side, 2008, 2009. And there was a guy actually working for me, and it was like in the midst of that, he handed his notice. And we'd already committed to move into the new place where we're at just now, Edmund Mill, which is rented. I'm quite open with it. It's rented. We didn't own it. It's still a big commitment. We'd have committed to, because it was obviously purpose built for what we were wanting to achieve at the front end. And he left, you know, and I was completely gutted because I thought, you know, that's not what. But I could understand because he was scared. He was scared of his job. He was scared, obviously, what the future brought. But I could see past that. You know, I could see past that. And my daughter, Laura was likely about 16 at the time or 17 at the time, and Phil was going out with her. And Phil was helping us out, you know, moving cars and doing a bit of cleaning and things like that as well. And Phil came and says, you know, would you offer me the position of sales? We spoke about it. And I remember actually sitting down at home and going, listen, Phil, you know, if you got a serious relationship going with Laura, and you've working with me as well, there's no escape, Phil. Yeah. You know, there's going to be no escape. So what you've got to remember is you can't bring any, you know, fights into work and so on and so forth. And we've always kind of kept that. Sometimes it's been very difficult because, you know, Phil and I have had some humdingers arguments really over the years. We've always fallen back in, if you know what I mean. But Phil took on that job, and Phil's been with us for 16 years. 16 years. Laura and Phil are still married. They've been married for 12. This is 11 or 12 years, and as I say, get 3 kids. So it works. Yeah. You know, you just got to make it work. It is understanding what the boundaries are, isn't it? So,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
You touched on it there, and obviously the first couple of hires, it's like how do they integrate and how did they go to? Was like culture's a big word that's thrown about in terms of kind of values you kind of put across, etc. Is that something you were conscious of back then in terms of hiring the right people to fit in? Yeah.
So I read a lot of books. Read a lot of books, and I've got a library at home. I love reading books and self-help books and things like that as well. And you take nuggets out of them. You know, not everyone's brilliant, but you get little nuggets out of them. And culture is very much it. So you've got to, your core values have got to come through. That is, you know, my core value is, and Simon Sinek basically put it into one book. You know, it's a why, isn't it? You know, you start with why, find out what your why actually is, and once you find out what your why is, you know, and my why is helping people. It's not selling cars. It's helping people. I want to help people. You know, nothing puts a bigger smile on my face than helping somebody out. If I can make money helping somebody out, even better still. So you've got to go in with that core value of helping people out, and that's what I hope I've achieved, taking right through to the company, even at a level where there's 22 of us. It's the why is it's helping people out. People have got problems. We help out sort out the problems in the easiest manner. Yes, we take money for it. To get those people to work for you is very difficult because people can, you know, you've come across them as well, James. You know, people are great interviewers, aren't they? You know, some people interview very, very well, and then they come in, and it's just like within the first few weeks, you think, so is that the same person I actually interviewed? You know, if you just tell the truth at the front end, you know, you'll you'll do well. Work ethic and positive attitude. That's the two things. Everything else you can teach, but you need a positive attitude and a work ethic.
Willingness.
A willingness to do it.
Yeah.
But you can teach everything else. But they've got to understand what the core values of the company are, and that's what they are. For that first few years, when we even moved to the new place, which was in 2009, that big front end area, there was only myself, Gail, Phil, and Mervyn the cleaner. There was four of us. And I remember one weekend, I can't remember exactly what it was, but if it wasn't 30 vehicles that were sold over Saturday and Sunday, it was something like 28 or something like that. It was crazy busy, absolutely mental. But you kind of sustain that. So you've then got to go, well, to make this work, you've got to take on more people. But likewise, you've got to watch your day become too top heavy. Sometimes I think we can become too top heavy with regards to wages. Wages, with the government changes, with national insurance and things like that, it's absolutely criminal. It's crippling. I do agree that there's got to be a standard of living in this country. I get it 100%. But forcing upon a minimum wage to this extent, it's not just a minimum wage, because the person above the minimum wage then goes, well, they've got a pay increase, well, we want a pay increase, and then obviously that difference is going to go further up as well. So every time there's a minimum wage increase, there's a huge explosion of wages cost. Look at wages cost increase over the last 2-3 years. It's criminal. I think the national insurance contribution cost change was like, it cost me 45 grand a year. You've got to make that money back to stand still. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is. It seems.
At the same time as keep everybody happy.
Aye, and that's it. And you see all these businesses, especially small businesses, struggling at the minute, closing down, and it's not good to see.
No, it's not. It's not good for. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for morale. No. It's not good for the communities that these people live in. Yeah. No, it's very disappointing how it seems to have been going this of late.
Yeah. How have you kind of navigated that across the years in terms of just obviously political changes, but business challenges and sort of adversities? Have you got a kind of common approach? Is it going back to that kind of future vision piece, or how do you typically navigate through that?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, the automotive industry has had a lot thrown at it over the years, but likewise, I understand that the automotive business is still tarred with this brush, typical car salesman. That's if I've heard that once, I've heard that a million times. There's not a typical car salesman. I didn't see myself as a car salesman. I see myself as a business person. And we're there to help. If you don't help, it's fine. It's not an issue at all. But so we didn't get the same empathy as a lot of businesses we get. Hospitality gets a lot of empathy, I think. Yeah. And there will most likely be a change of VAT forced by the government, forced from the hospitality on the government to make that change to hospitality VAT. It's unlikely it will not happen. I think it will happen, but it won't happen in the automotive industry. It seems to be the cash cow for the government. And that's no fiddles out going, listen, feel sorry for me. It's not what it's about at all. But the reality is, it's not a victimless increase, because the thing is, costs go up. Guess what? The cost to you for getting your car serviced, the margin and the car sale are all going up. If you look at the huge increase in car prices over the last 5 years since COVID, are absolutely monstrous.
Yeah. But then breaking that down from your business perspective, that's essential for the rising costs that are coming.
Absolutely.
It's not just profit margins that are increasing.
We're not growing profit-wise.
No.
We're not benefiting from profit-wise. We are employing, we're paying more for employment costs.
Provide
We're
the
paying
service.
more for our energy costs. Our rates are going up. Everything goes up.
Yeah.
So we have got to hear these changes just to price increases just to stand still.
That's it. And it's a difficult thing to balance, isn't it? Trying to impact the conversion of your sales and
Correct.
impact the reputation potentially, because oh my God, you see the price increases here, but it's like if Abdi was aware of. I think a lot of folks sometimes don't realise.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've been very open with, James, is we've never pitched ourselves as the cheapest with anything. With anything. And the reason, that was a conscious decision, because I put value on how long, even back in the day, I put value on how long it took me to find a car, the right car for the person, do the work to get it there and clean and things like that. And you could do the same job a lot cheaper, but when it was when it was just a tidy car, and when it was just a nice car, and you want to look after the customer as well. So you get to pay more. Mm-hmm. So we say, look, yes, you're paying more, so didn't come with a price thing for me, because there's no two cars exactly the same anyway, and we will look after you. You'll only ever find out how good we are once you've got a problem. But you've got to experience that problem. But the chances are, we've been in business for 23 years. If you've bought a car from us, any car over that period of time, you will have experienced a problem of some description, and we've sorted out. Yes. So.
Yeah. I think that's something that comes across on your social media, to be honest. That care element, care about customers, care about your staff, care about the service as well. How's that then also impacted your business in a positive manner in terms of repeat customers and referrals from them? It's almost like the hidden marketing you didn't see, isn't it? Has that been quite massive for you?
Yeah. So it's funny. I on the way here, I drove down Rose Hill, and I saw Jim Murison at Murison Garage, and I thought, I haven't seen Jim for ages. I just popped in past, and I just said, "Hi, Jim. Haven't seen you for years." And it used to be, and he's a traditional car sales, been there for 54 years. I think they've been in business, Murison. And I says, I don't know how the automotive industry is going to go over the next few years. And he says, no, it's changed. He says, but he says, one thing's for sure though, like Murisons and ourselves, we'll always look after our customers. Yeah. And he says, you'll always retain customers because you look after them. And he says, the big boys don't know how to do it. It's true. I think the big boys have learned quite a lot over the last few years, but still, on Thursday, just to give an example of looking after customers. On Thursday last week, I tried to make a booking for 2 vehicles under warranty of the same company. I'm still waiting a phone call back, and this is now Tuesday. Now, I've actually phoned 4 times to chase them up since then, and I've still not got the phone call back. I only went to book 2 cars in. Now, that's not, I'm being persistent because it's my customers' cars. Sure. If it's my own car, I'd be going, listen, I'm not going back there. Just simple, pimple. So you've got to look after it. You've got to set your standards, and there are certain standards that we will actually go to. It's got to be within 24 hours. We've got to go back to customers. That is like that is very, very end of it. If you know what I mean. I try and get back within an hour if we can, a couple of hours type of thing. So yeah, set standards out. Look after your customers. Retention, repeat customers and referrals. Accounts for between 65 and 70% of our business. Yeah. So we've only got to top up a little from social media. We've only got to top a bit up from advertising, because there's natural, obviously, decrease because obviously people die, people move, people get company cars, whatever. So you've got to do that. But that is our over the last good period of time, last 10 years, that's been constant. 65, 70%.
Superb.
Yep.
Superb. I want to go back a wee bit. You mentioned, obviously, quite a lot of family involved in the business, and you touched on earlier about there are now some shares being, I don't know, gifted. Has that been right, or how have you structured that?
So I'll be more open. So Gil and I have 50-50. Well, we had 50-50% each, and we decided that we wanted to take Liam, my son, Phil, my son, his son-in-law, and Laura into the business. We took them on as directors back in 2020, I think it was, just about COVID time, 21. And we have since obviously given them shares. So basically we've taken 5% of our shares and given them 5% each, just to give them a taste of share. That way they get a dividend payment, obviously when things are going good, which is obviously tax efficient as well, and gives them a vested interest obviously in the business as well, because you never know.
Yes.
You never know what's going to happen. You know, I'm 56 years old, 57 this year. You know, I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be working into my 60s. You know, I went to, I don't think I'll ever retire.
Yes.
Because I didn't see my work as being work.
Aye. Makes sense.
You know, so why would I step away from something that I really, really passionately enjoy, and that's looking after the customers. So I think I'll still be involved to some extent, but I've already taken my week down to, you know, what was 7 days a lot of years ago. I only work 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I always take a Friday off, and I have done for the last 2 years, and I've been really disciplined in it. There's only 2 Fridays I think I've actually worked, just because of staffing issues to cover, and that's how it is, you know. So, but the guys are doing really well with Liam in the service side of things. So we'd kind of hoped he would actually stay in the service side of things, but there's been a bit of change about. So he's back across in sales along with Phil. So he works very closely with Phil. There's 3 in sales, and there's 2 at the front of the house in service now as well. But the overlook, so Liam's like the MOT manager for the after sales side of things as well. So, but you know, they get it. They know where we want to go with the company. Yeah. They understand it, you know, and the basic elements of, you know, looking after customers.
Yeah, that was going to be a question I came on to actually. So obviously, when you're thinking about maybe winding down, retiring, exiting businesses, etc., there's probably 2 routes you could go down. There's hoping family, you know, continue on in the name and the values and the customer care, but there's also the completely sell to another,
yep,
you know, dealership or whatever. Yep. Was that a strategic decision?
Yeah, I think it's always a very difficult one. If you've got a franchise,
yeah,
let's say I had a Volkswagen franchise, I would have sold. Yeah, sure. Because at the end of the day, you get money back very, very quickly, and everyone owns a Volkswagen franchise. I don't have a franchise. Yeah. I've got my name as my reputation. So unless my name stays the same, and I didn't really want my name being carried by somebody else at another company, because at the end of the day, it's my name, it's my reputation that I've built, and if they didn't hold the same values as a business as we do, you know, you're not tarnishing my name, the one that I've built. You know, your reputation can go very, very quickly. Yeah. Homelessness. You know, we've all walked past and we've all put a tenner out somebody's heart or whatever. And I always look at homelessness as a big lesson in life, because, you know, without asking that person personally, we were only one bad decision away from being on that street. Mm-hmm. And I live my life like that. Yeah. You know, that's how I live my life. And I'm very conscious of the decisions I make. Sometimes I react really quickly to something. Sometimes I take a lot of time to think about something. But I know, you know, every decision I make is the right decision for what I think is the issue. But we're only one bad decision away from being on that street. You know, and if you live your life like that, you keep sharp.
I love that.
You know,
I love that principle. Yeah. It's pretty obvious and evident just by speaking to you the day that, and you mentioned books and self-help and all that type of stuff. I'm massive into that as well. But you mentioned Simon Sinek. Is there anything? Is there one book that you maybe read or an audio you listened to or a podcast, whatever it is, whatever source it is, that it's like, bang, that was a game changer?
There's likely 2 books. There's likely 2 books that, I mean, there's loads of books I could mention. There's loads of books that I could say, listen, there's little nuggets in this and that. My first book, Mind Store by Jack Black. Okay. And it's one of those that a lot of people go, who's Jack Black? You know, is that the actor guy? Scottish guy. Okay. Right. Wrote a couple of books, and it was Mind Store, and it was Mind Store for Business. And he used to do and he still does. He does weekends away and things like that as well for business. But absolute genius. Google him.
Okay.
I would say to all your listeners, all your viewers, Google him.
Yeah.
Jack Black, Mindstore, fantastic guys. I even got a birthday card from him for my 30th birthday because I'd done something. I think I actually got one on my 40th birthday as well. And he's on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And he sometimes comments on some of my stuff as well.
Brilliant.
Brilliant book. And that gives you an understanding. I wouldn't even spoil it for you because
Okay.
it gives you a completely different way. He had a massive change in his mindset because one of his friends died.
Right.
And that kind of paths the way through. And the other book is Think and Grow Rich
Oh yeah.
by Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon Hill.
You know, and I often pick it up, and my book is like so old, it's unbelievable. It was like a second-hand shop, and you know, panning through the there are dog ears and things like that. I love his stories and that because his stories are brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, and they're so, you know, today you maybe look at it and go, that's a bit cheesy, but they're fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, and it's about obviously your mindset, persistence.
Yeah.
It's all the basics that you need for running a business. I remember back to the Mindstore. The Mindstore, I remember actually where I bought that book as well,
Okay.
a Jack Black book. And I bought it at Elgin.
Okay.
And it was in the town hall, and they were actually doing a business gateway, or whatever it was called at that time, event. And Gail and I went up to it. And that obviously shows you the kind of the brain that I actually had when I was starting my business. And we only had Laura.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like one, because I remember pushing a bit in a buggy. And she's now 33.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's well before I even started in business, like 10 years before I started in business. And I remember going through and why are you here and whatever. I spoke to a few of the people, and I said, really like to start up in business. Oh, okay. They're almost all put me off.
Really?
I thought, really? But I was persistent. I went back and forth to some of these events and things like that as well, and listened to some of these business gateway events. And in fact, Business Gateway, when I actually started doing all the research for starting doing the business plan and things like that, were a massive help.
Nice.
You know, the local ones were really, really helpful. But I bought that book because I saw that book, Mindstore, and flicked through the first few pages, and I said, I'll buy that book. And that's like why I cherish it so much.
Yeah.
You know, it's a brilliant book. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant book.
Superb.
Yeah.
Love that. What's the hardest moment been through building the business?
Oh wow, there's likely been a few. As well, a couple of lessons I learned. I was at a talk. I do a few talks for schools and that, and I was at Kemnay Academy just a few weeks ago. I've done this one a few times. It's automotive foundation apprenticeship type of things that they do, and it's always good because they're really interested, obviously, in the automotive side of things. So I've got a kind of set talk with that. But some of the questions this time around was brilliant, honestly brilliant, James. And there were 15-year-old guys that were actually there. There was about 9 of them, and some of the questions were absolutely brilliant. I mean, blow away questions. What's your biggest lesson in business? Well, the biggest lesson was after your first year in business, you know, pretty successful, didn't have huge, blew away the target I put myself, because I mean, I didn't even care where you were going to start and where you were going to stop type of thing. And I'm the lad, you know, I know how it's done now, and you get a bit cocksure of yourself. And you've got to be very careful of that when you're in business. So the second year is completely different. And I likely learned so much in my second year compared with all the time I've been in business. And one was cash flow. Yeah, cash flow. I learned the cash flow in year 2. I knew how to handle cash flow, but you'd always stretch to the very end and whatever. And I remember had a car full of yards, and if you've got a car full of yards, you've got nothing in the bank. And it was getting nearer and nearer the month end. And it was really quiet. It must have been about August time, I think it was again. I think maybe Trades Fortnight, and it got really, really quiet. And I was all, I've got bills to pay, and look at my bank. I've got now a lot of available cash in the bank, and I've got suppliers to pay. Wages was only me and Gail, so it wasn't a big deal. And obviously the cleaner guy. I'm still thinking to myself, it's not getting any better. It's not getting any better. Listen, I'm getting a better decision here. But of course, I've been kind of balls out doing some slightly bigger deals, and instead of trading on some of the higher end stuff, I kept it to retail it. Okay. I thought, panic stations, it's like the last few days, I really need to get sort this out. I need money in the bank to obviously go and pay suppliers, or we could go pop here. So picked up the phone to Eddie Morrison at Morrison Motors, and Eddie gives me some advice right at the very start. Lovely guy, Eddie, and Brian and Colin, the brothers, and I picked up the phone to Eddie. Eddie says, I need your help here. I said, I've got a couple of cars, which I think might actually do you okay. Can I trade them to you? He says, what do you need for him? And I says, what I need from him? He says, why are you selling them yourselves? I said, I'm kind of tight for cash. He says, I'll buy them for you. And I promised myself I would never let myself ever be in that situation again. And I wasn't. And I've never been. Because you know when you come up that month end, you've got to have that kind of open cash. You know, we can quite easily have get crazy amount of money tied up. We can have $1 million plus tied up in cars. But if they're not selling them in the bank, you've got no money. So you can have, cash, but it looks like a cash business, but it's not cash rich because you make nothing in your bank. In suppliers, if they don't get paid once, that's it. That's you going. So that was certainly a lesson in year 2. Loads of different downside of things. Obviously the financial side of things in 2008, 2009 was really tough. It was a really tough gig. But again, likewise, it's perspective. I remember saying, "Oh, God, I can't believe how little I'm doing." I made £1,000. I remember saying to this guy, "Oh, you made £1,000." He says, "But you made £1,000." And he flashed and he says, "Here's my management accounts." And I went, "Wow!" And a minus in front of it. I thought, "Ooh." He says, "Aye." He says, "So didn't always reach for the big status, because that's what can happen when things slow down. So you're in a good position." Other things. COVID was tough. COVID was tough. I was actually thinking about COVID this morning, because we did a lot of walking, Gil and I, walking and talking, and with our dog Fern at the time, who's sadly lost a couple of years ago. But COVID, I think, we learnt as society a lot of lessons. It went for the panic of, I braced myself for it. I could almost see what was going to happen. I was on the news all the time, watching it. We'd actually planned to close on that Friday. Really? Yeah, because things had dried up so quickly. And I thought to myself, and there's no point in having the place open, because all we're doing is burning fuel, burning lights, heating, things like that. Let's just tuck it all back. So I kind of prepped myself. I'd spoken to Phil, and Phil was brilliant. I said to Phil, I said, "Look, let's get some cash back in, right? Let's go and sell. You can see these cars here we normally retail. Go and offer them out to some of the trade guys." I said, they'll buy them. They'll definitely buy them. "Why are you going to do it?" I said, "Because we need to." I said, "We need to get money back in the bank, make sure we've got enough money to pay wages for a 3-month, 4-month, possibly a 6-month period. Let's just do it, Phil, because we've still got our bills coming in. If something's to happen with this COVID thing, none of us know what's going to happen. We don't know how long it's going to last. We need to keep paying folk." I says, "This is the cars you need to go and sell." And honestly, it was brilliant. Within a week, he'd sold all these cars. Money back in the bank. Bank was looking a lot healthier. So I'd made a decision based on the fact that the bank balance was at whatever. And I says, "Again, we're going to close on the Friday." So we dwindled everything down. And then Boris obviously put out an announcement, and I think it was on the Tuesday. We'd close the next day. We didn't open the next day. Simple as that. And that was, it went for, "Oh gee, this is reality," And then you sit at home for a week and you think, "Okay, is this it then?" Is this it? Everything we've built up over the years, sitting with Gail and going, "Is this it?" We've spent 20 years of our life building this up to this point, and it can all go overnight, and we've got no control over it. that was scary. The furlough thing was a saviour.
Yeah.
You know, kind of everybody speaks about, obviously, the bad things about Conservative government, about this, that, and the next thing, about obviously the parties behind the closed doors, and they were wrong. But if it wasn't for furlough, this country would be a huge, huge mess. So thankfully, obviously, we survived through that. So that was obviously a tough gig, but it learnt us a lot of lessons as well, because it learnt, obviously, there's more to life than just the business. We were going out for hours and walking our dog in the forest, enjoying our life. Brilliant weather, of course, as well, which was brilliant. And lastly, one of the biggest likely disappointments was a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, where we found an employee, and when I mention the name, had been stealing fish. Been with us for 8 years. Yeah. We still didn't know what the final number was, but we reckon it's circa 100 grand. So that was a massive disappointment. It certainly made me sit back and think, am I doing this job right? Because I trust too many people. And that was a really difficult pill. You like to see it still takes me a minute to speak about it, because it still affects me, but it really, really did affect me. Unfortunately, we got him arrested for theft. Unfortunately, the way it was handled by both the police and the appropriate fiscal, it was badly handled, unfortunately, and he got 30 hours community service. And even if we went back and got him rearrested for fraud, we didn't take it any further because we thought it was going to be too close to the double jeopardy law. So that took up a lot of space in my mind for 2 years.
Sure, yeah.
I've now kind of parked it.
Yeah.
Listen, let's move on. It was trying to protect somebody else as well, because that person's now employed by somebody else.
Yeah.
And undoubtedly,
yeah,
that person will be doing it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's the difficulty. As I say, I'm not going to open myself, obviously, to who it was and whatever. But really difficult situation for everybody involved in the business as well. So the employees included.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Last one before we wrap up. It's almost for the hour. If you could go back to day one of the journey, starting the business, what would you tell yourself that you didn't think back then?
Oh, wow. That's a really difficult question. Mm-hmm. I didn't regret anything. I think if you live regretting the decisions you've made, you're spending too much time in the wrong things. So if I was to say I was going to tell myself something different, it means I've taken the wrong path. I'm not the richest car dealer out there, from a money perspective, but I'm likely the richest in life when it comes to a balance in my family. I've got my family working with me, and if I decide to take this afternoon off, I can do it, because I can there's somebody there to fill in my position. We always, what's life about? Is it about money, or is it about happiness? And happiness is the small things in life that you didn't actually realise until you look back on them.
Yeah.
And it's that moment when you've got a cup of coffee in your hand and you're just looking at your grass growing, or, in your garden, or speaking to your wife, or the grandkids shouting and screaming. Yeah, that's what happiness is. So when I tell myself anything different, I do not think I would, James. Yeah. I don't think I would.
Brilliant. Yeah, superb. Well, appreciate your time.
Good man.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you much.
If folk need to connect with you, want to hear more about your story, would LinkedIn be the place, or where's best?
Yeah, LinkedIn's likely the place. I'm likely addicted to LinkedIn. I like sharing our story on there as well. Hopefully it brings a bit of value to somebody somewhere along the lines. Jim at jamesduguidproperty.co.uk. Now that we've taken the vehicle sales bit out, the email address as well is likely the best way to get a hold of me as well. Right. But by all means, if I can help, helping people it's what I do.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of say that I can give a lot of time to it because obviously time is the only thing that we've got control over ourselves. And I kind of say I can give a lot of time all the time, but I can maybe help a wee bit of advice. But happy to do so.
Brilliant. Superb, Jim.
Good man.
Thank you very much.